Howdy, and I'm Jason Mark here for Edible Education, and we're talking today about sustainable meat production with, among other folks, James Faison from Milton's Local, which is a fantastic concern in Virginia. So James, tell us about Milton's Local. How exactly does it work?
Yeah, so Milton's Local is named after my grandfather, Milton Faison, who was a second-generation farmer. So it started after I sort of moved away and was practicing law, and my grandparents passed away, and they left the family farms to my siblings and I. And then from there, just started speaking with other farmers who were raising their animals antibiotic, hormone, and steroid-free, and noticing that they were having a lot of problems just with viability. They wanted to
Commercial
farm.
viability.
Exactly. They wanted to farm, but they really weren't able to make enough money to stay farming, period, and especially to farm during a sustainable way, which we define as hormone, antibiotic, and steroid-free. And so instead of just trying to focus on our farm, we wanted to work with as many farmers as we could to sort of develop a sort of supply chain, marketing, sales solution so that they could access more markets, and that's how it started.
And I want to come back to that, but I mean, your personal story, you went the classic farmer training route. You went to Harvard, got a degree in government, went to University of Virginia Law School, a top flight law school. I mean, that's what a lot of farmers do, right? You go to Harvard, you go to UVA Law School. I mean, how did you get into farming? I mean, you said your grandfather, but I mean, where did kind of the passion come from? Where did that interest come from?
So I grew up in a small rural town. I grew up on my grandparents' farm. I was there 2 to 3 days a week, and my grandfather was a hog farmer. So like Sunday meals included pork. And so I never thought I would end up doing it. But when my grandparents passed away, you know, like a lot of folks who come from farming backgrounds, they really impress upon you the importance of like land and.
So your dad, your folks
it.
didn't run the farm; they weren't farmers.
My father was a farmer and an ag agent, but he passed away.
I see.
And so then my siblings and I just stepped into that role, and you know, one thing just led to another.
So you say your grandfather was a hog farmer, and today Milton's Local, that is still the kind of base of your business is pork production?
We pork and beef.
Pork and beef.
Yep.
I see. So let's get back to kind of what Milton's Local is really doing in terms of kind of knitting together farmers and then linking them with consumers, restaurants, or wholesalers to actually create a viable market. So what's the biggest barrier to entry, or what's the biggest challenge for, say, a small or mid-sized rancher in the Mid-Atlantic region?
So I think what drives agriculture in general right now is scale, and there's just no way around it. And if you're going
to get big or get out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're doing conventional ag, if you're doing alternative ag. At the end of the day, in America, we only spend about 6.8% of our income on food. And so that means you have to have scale and you have to have volume. And so that's the toughest thing is, as a farmer, how do you get to that point where you have scale? And so we try to work with our farmers on that. One of the things we really try to do is, if you have your direct farmers markets, that's awesome, keep them. We want you to continue doing that, but as you grow, if you need more outlets to help move your product, then we're there to help.
But I guess, is this because, you know, you say scale, but then, you know, we know there's a lot of negative consequences of corporate farms being too big, right? They get to a scale that's so large, or kind of beyond the human scale, and then you get all these negative consequences that Edible Education has covered in depth over the years. So you're not exactly telling people to get huge. You want them to sort of find this Goldilocks sweet spot, right?
Well, I want them to, first of all, I want them to do what their family plan and their business allows them to do. Yeah. Because some farmers don't have the ambition to become full-time farmers. Some farmers want the farming lifestyle. Some farmers have great off-farm jobs in which they just want farming to supplement. But for the farmers out there that do want to make their living farming, what we want them to do is, you know, raise their animals in a responsible way, which for us is hormone, antibiotic, and steroid-free. And for our livestock farmers, every single one raises their animals on pasture.
And so why is that important? Just, I mean, kind of take us back a step. I mean, why are those principles important to you? Why are they kind of important to the environment and to the communities in which you operate?
I think they're important because they reduce the negative environmental impact. So a lot of your high-intensity confinement operations, they are very harmful to the environment. I think progress is being made there, but be it waste runoff, be it animal welfare concerns, I don't think they're as good for the environment and for animals as a more pasture-based sort of livestock raising system.
So you talked about scale. What about other just barriers to entry? I mean, like, there's a big issue of there not being enough slaughterhouses. We used to have all these local, regional slaughterhouses, and again, as consolidation happened and as farms got huge, a lot of the slaughterhouses were consolidated. I mean, do you have a slaughterhouse kind of network there in the Mid-Atlantic to get your stuff to market?
Yeah, I actually feel a little bit different on this issue, because when we're seeing slaughterhouses are almost 100% about scale. So basically, traditionally, the way a slaughterhouse makes their money is through the drop, right? They don't make their money through the actual slaughtering. And so if you have so many slaughterhouses where they're not able to get scale, then it sort of has this downstream effect where your farmers can't get scale because the cost of processing is so high that it knocks them out of being able to enter those wholesale markets. So I think, again, it's a balance. You want people to have access to the slaughterhouses, but if you don't have slaughterhouses that are getting enough flow where they can be viable businesses, then it doesn't allow those producers to access wholesale markets because the cost of processing just becomes too high.
So you talked about costs, you talked about how little we spend on food in this country.
Right.
It's like less than 7% of kind of take-home dollars, probably the lowest in the world, right? The kind of share of our income we spend on food. Do you think we should spend more on food? I mean, should actually we be paying more of our dollars to farmers? And if so, what does that kind of mean for people who really kind of might be on the edge of whether or not they're going to be able to feed their families? I mean, how do you kind of square that circle?
I think they're two separate questions. Should we be paying more to farmers? Absolutely yes. Farmers are not making money, and that's just a fact. Be it conventional farmers, be it alternative farmers, they're really struggling out there. And I think people can get confused because you can look at the sort of capital assets that farmers have. They may have a $350,000 tractor. They may have $1 million grain bin. But at the end of the day, their house may only be worth $50,000 or $60,000 because all that money is coming back through there to pay off their loans to manage their equipment. As far as paying more for food, that's a tough conversation to have in a backdrop of the amount of income inequality we have in this country. We haven't had workers have a raise in 15, 20 years. So it's kind of tough to tell them, hey, your price of food should go up 10, 20, 30%. So I think that sort of becomes a narrative on how we want to use our government subsidies and how we want to spend the limited dollars that as consumers we do have.
So kind of another tough question in terms of consumption. So, we know, and Mark Bittman's written about this, it's one of the readings for this edible education class, that there are all these negative environmental consequences of a meat-heavy diet, that there's obviously personal consequences of eating too much meat for your own personal health. But you're in the meat business.
Right.
I mean, do you think that, Americans are eating the right amount of meat, too much meat? And if so, what kind of is the right portion of meat that we should be eating in our diets?
I'm a fan of a healthy, balanced diet, and I think meat is a part of that diet, but meat isn't necessarily the majority of that diet. So I think if you're going to eat meat, you should eat sustainably raised meat, which we believe is hormone, antibiotic, and steroid-free. But I certainly don't advocate, anyone eating nothing but meat. I think a balanced diet and exercise is very important.
You're not pro-paleo?
I'm not necessarily going to come out here and advocate for paleo diets, no.
James, thanks so much for talking with us. Is there anything else you want to add and make sure that folks understand about your work and what you're doing?
Sure. Thanks for having me, and just excited to have the opportunity to work with family farms that are raising their animals antibiotic, hormone, and steroid-free.
Cool. Best luck to you.
Thank you so much.
I'm Jason Mark, and this is the Edible Education Series. We're talking about James Faison of Milton's Local in Virginia.